to you about the Peregrine Falcon FledgeWatch that takes place in Edmonton every summer. And I'm going to do that by sharing some of my photos and some of my experiences. There's a documentary called Return of the Peregrine, and there's the very long URL. It's about the recovery program that took place in Alberta from the 1970s to the early 2000s. And I found it incredibly inspiring. So if you get a chance to watch it, that'd be great. But I'll do a quick recap. In the 50s and 60s, the peregrine falcon population experienced a sharp decline in North America due to the overuse of DDT. And in 1970, they were listed as endangered with only one productive pair in Alberta and in fact in all of southern Canada. But through a very innovative and bold captive breeding program and with the reintroduction to the wild, their numbers improved. And so that by the year 2000, they were downlisted to threatened. And now there are about 75 active pairs in Alberta, which is a huge success story. Just to let you know that the FledgeWatch is a small part of a much bigger recovery plan. So there is an Alberta Peregrine Recovery Plan, and these are the 4 strategies. The first is to reduce human disturbance at nest sites by educating the property owners and letting them know that there might be some safety issues for their staff, for example, if they go up on a roof or anywhere near the nesting site. And the second is to reduce loss of young by removing them from nest sites with a high risk of fledgling mortality. The third is to do surveys every 5 years to monitor the population size. And the fourth is to collect non-viable eggs and analyze them to monitor for pesticide residues. So this was all taken from the Alberta Peregrine Falcon Recovery Plan report, which you can Google if you're interested in reading more. So here's the advisory group. Gord Court was featured in that documentary, and he's the team lead. Jeff Holroyd was also in the documentary, and he was at one time the chair of the National Peregrine Recovery Program. Steve Schwartz is a falconer, and he assists with this program. And Bev and Peter Fulbrandt are the heart and soul of the FledgeWatch in Edmonton, which they started in 2008 at the request of Gord Court. So I'll be talking about these folks throughout the talk. So for those of you who aren't familiar, this is what an adult peregrine falcon looks like. They've got that dark helmet and Elvis Presley sideburns. Notice that the eye ring and cere, which is the fleshy part at the base of the beak, are yellow on the adult. They're whitish underparts with barring across the lower flanks. And they have the quintessential long, narrow peregrine falcon wings with these extra long primary feathers here. So these pictures were taken last summer. They're of the adult male at the Misericordia Hospital nesting site. And this is a picture of the fledgling. You can see that it's much different than the adult. It's got that really pretty sort of orangey tan coloring to it. And notice that the eye ring and the cere are blue on the fledgling. 2 quick definitions. A fledgling is a young bird developing its flight feathers and learning how to fly. And to fledge means to take their first flight. The Alberta Conservation Association has webcams at some of the nesting sites in and around Edmonton, and this is live streaming, so you can go to their website and check out some of the action at the nesting sites. These cameras are really, really important to the FledgeWatch. We can see how many eggs there are, how many hatch successfully, whether the chicks are healthy. There was one summer when Bev was watching and she noticed that they weren't doing well. So Gord went up and removed them. And in fact, they all had a parasite probably carried in on a pigeon, and they were removed from the nesting box. But the most important reason why these webcams are important to us is that we can see when the chicks hatch and then calculate from there when they're going to be fledging, and that's when we set up the FledgeWatch. So here are the locations of the webcams. The Clinical Sciences Building at the U of A, University of Alberta, is our primary site for the FledgeWatch. But we also check out the fledglings at the Misericordia Hospital and at the Weber Center on Calgary Trail. And the Weber Center is now called Clark Builders, but I'll continue to call it Weber for this talk. So there's also a webcam on the bell tower downtown, but it's there's no place for us to set up a FledgeWatch there. And there's webcams and the two rural sites of the Genesee generating station and the nutrient fertilizer plant. So it's only these bottom three that have the webcams working this year. And so we don't have the webcams for our three main sites here, which is really, really challenging for us, but they've indicated that they'll get this one up and running for next year. I wanted to do a short comparison of between a urban nesting site and a rural one. So the photo on the left was provided by Gordon Court, and that's the bell tower downtown in Edmonton. And the nesting site is up above the 32nd floor. And last summer, there were 4 chicks. There were 2 females that were removed at the time they did the banding. 2 males were left to see how they fared, but they ended up needing to be rescued. They must have hit a building or something. So all 4 chicks ended up being taken out to a hack site. And I'll talk to you more about a hack site later. On the right is the Genesee nesting site. And last summer there were 3 chicks and all 3 fledged successfully. There was 1 non-viable egg, which Cord would have removed to analyze. But you can see that the urban settings have a much higher risk for the fledglings than the urban one. So I'm going to do a quick sort of overview of the time that Peregrine spent in Edmonton. And I just want to explain that you're going to see some videos and photos like this one here. These were taken from the live stream. They were sort of grabbed off the live stream. And it was Margie Krasinski who did that. She's one of the organizers of the FledgeWatch. So I'm really grateful that she shared these with me. So the adults will arrive in early April. So this being late April, they've already come back. They would have gone their separate ways. So when they first returned, they reestablished their relationship, or they establish a new one by doing bonding rituals. And they may have to defend their nesting site from other peregrines, and that can sometimes result in quite vicious battles and sometimes to the death. So I'm going to play a short video here that was taken from the live stream. This is the Clinical Sciences Building nesting box. That's Radisson, the female, on the right, and Chase, the male, on the left. And they're going to do a short bonding ritual. And that's the chirruping sound that the adults make with each other. So they lay their eggs in May. Usually there's about 3 or 4 eggs per clutch. And the eggs are laid 2 days apart. You'll notice in this picture that there aren't any twigs or grassy nesting materials. They just scrape a small depression in the gravel there and lay their eggs in that. The incubation period is about 30 days, and both parents take part. And one interesting thing is that, I mentioned that they lay their eggs 2 days apart. So they don't start incubating until the 2nd or 3rd egg is laid. So this is a short video. Radisson's about to take a break, and Chase is coming in for his shift. correction, sorry. And so they hatch in early June. Sorry. And by mid-July, they are ready to fledge by the time they're 40 to 46 days old. So that, of course, is when the FledgeWatch starts. And we actually started about a few days earlier, just in case we miscalculated or one of them flies out early. And the fledglings will hang around for about a month and a half to 2 months. They continue to be fed until they learn how to hunt for themselves. And then they leave anytime between the end of August to the end of September, and they all go their separate ways. The adults stay longer. They continue to do some bonding exercise rituals. And they clean up the nesting site, and then they leave around the first week of October. The map on the right there was given to me by Jeff Holroyd. He put tracking devices on 3 adult Peregrine Falcons, and this is where they flew to after they left Edmonton and Calgary. So you can see that one of them flew down to southern Mexico and stopped there, while the other 2 continued into South America. So that was the overview, and now I'm going to backtrack and start again. So this is a chick around 3 weeks old. And this is the ideal time for Gord Court and his team to bring the chicks down to be banded. And these pictures are from the nesting site at the Janice generating station. And Gord always invites all the staff to come out and see the chicks, learn about them, hold them, get their pictures taken with them, as a way to educate them and to sort of get them sort of engaged in the project. The red arrows there at the bottom are pointing to what are called pin feathers in the wings and the tail. And those grow into their flight feathers. So they go from a 3-week-old chick to a fledgling in 3 to 4 weeks, which is just quite extraordinary. And so this is mid-July. So that's when we set up the FledgeWatch. And there's a calendar that the volunteers can go into and sign up for shifts. They go from 6 in the morning till 10 at night. So we have them covered from sun up till sundown. And it goes for 2 to 3 weeks as long as it's needed. And the picture on the right is Bev and Peter Fulbrat. So after each shift or during each shift, the volunteers will report to the group and let people know how things are going and where the fledglings are, etc. This is a picture of the nesting box on the Clinical Sciences building at the University of Alberta. So the big yellow arrow is pointing to the nesting box above the 13th floor there. But you can also see there's a glass pedway beneath it and a busy road. It's quite a challenging place for them to fledge. So the watchers set up on the top of a public parkade. So you can see in the middle of the picture there. And it's really an ideal location with the nesting box on the left there on the Clinical Sciences building. Facing east, the peregrines fly out and over us. And they'll fly over to the College Plaza, which is down in the bottom here. The adults spend a lot of time on the College Plaza or the University Terrace or the Mazankowski Alberta Heart Institute or any of a number of other buildings in the area. So this is a path of a fledgling taking its first flight that was reported to the group. So I'll just sort of relate that to you. They're quite wobbly when they fly out, doing a lot of hard flapping. And this one flew over to the College Plaza, didn't quite make the ledge, circled back, flew and tried to land onto the roof of the Mazankowski, didn't quite make that, and so ended up onto the University Terrace building. But sometimes they'll fly into the neighborhood of Garneau, in which case we have to go down to ground level and search for them. And sometimes it can take several hours. But it can watching them take those first flights is exciting and dramatic, but it can be a little nerve-wracking at times too. So this is what the Mazankowski Alberta Heart Institute looks like from the top of the parkade. And it is definitely the biggest obstacle that the fledglings face at this site. When they first started nesting there, the Mazankowski hadn't been built yet. And you might think, well, why don't you remove the nesting box? But even if they did, the peregrines would likely still return to this site. Case in point, at the Weber Center, they were doing construction on the roof for 2 summers and they removed the box. The peregrines still returned there, and Gord went up and removed 2 clutches of eggs last summer. So it's just something that they have to contend with. Another issue at the Mazankowski is the STARS ambulance helicopter flies in about once a day. And so it's just a matter of educating the staff at the hospital and the staff of the STARS helicopters, letting them know when the FledgeWatch is taking place, and letting them know that as they go from the helicopter on the roof to the entrance to the hospital, they have to be aware that they might get strafed by the adults. But last summer, all the adults and the fledglings were all really relaxed when the helicopter came in. So this is a close-up view of the nesting box at the Clinical Sciences building. So the fledglings, of course, start in the box, and then they'll come out onto those rungs that are out front. They may then hop over to what we call the netting on the right-hand side there, which is covering the ladder structure. And from there, they might do a short hop flight up to the top of the nesting box, but they can fledge from any of those positions. And this is Radisson, the mother. She's on top of the webcam equipment and just keeping a close eye on them. So before they take their first flights, the fledglings spend a lot of time flapping really, really hard. And that's to develop the muscles, the flight muscles in their chest, so that they're ready to go. I wanted to just share some images of the feeding stages that they go through. Of course, the chicks have the adults bring in food right into the nesting box. And when we're on the parkade, we can always tell when that's happening, because if we don't see them, we'll hear them. So as the chicks get older, the adults spend less time in there because it can get quite rowdy, and yeah, they're just in and out sometimes. And of course, then the adults will continue to feed the fledglings wherever they happen to be. And eventually, what they'll do is they'll bring prey in occasionally, but then just fly away with it, and that's to entice the young ones to fledge. And once they have fledged and they're flying strongly, the adults will do mid-air food transfers, and that's sort of a stepping stone. The fledglings will go and grab the food from the adult, and that's a stepping stone towards being able to hunt on their own. So the food that the parents bring in, it's avian prey, which means birds. So they bring in pigeons, shorebirds, gulls. Last summer, there were a lot of Franklin's gulls. So meet the parents. This is Radisson. She's the adult female at the U of A. She is banded, so we know that she came from Winnipeg and she was born on the Radisson Hotel there. That's why that's her name. And she's been coming to this nesting box since 2008. And we know that migrating peregrines, their lifespan is 13 to 15 years. And this year, Radisson will be turning 15. So this could very well be her last time here. This is Chase. He's the adult male, and he joined Radisson in 2012. He displaced the male that was already there. He doesn't have a band, so we don't know where he originated from. And this is the first one to fledge from last summer. This is yellow band, E58, and he's a male. So I'll just explain what I meant by that. Oopsie. On their left leg, you'll see that there's a black band with numbers on it. And that's the E58. That's their official band that Cord puts on. And on the right leg, at the nesting sites where we're doing a FledgeWatch, Gord will put colored tape on their right leg, a different color for each fledgling, and that's to help us tell them apart and keep an eye on them. So this is yellow band. They flew really well, and ended up on this window ledge at the University Terrace back on July 17th. So you can see it's a very fine line between landing on that thin ledge and hitting the window. So it can be quite precarious. And one thing that's sort of fun in these pictures, in the upper right-hand one, you can see an office plant, and then the bottom left, you can see somebody's laptop computers. So sometimes when people are actually in the offices, some people are very excited to get this front row seat and get a close look at these fledglings. Some people freak out and they just want them to go away. So this is yellow, a couple of weeks after fledging and flying really strongly. And this is his brother, blue band. Now the males are smaller and lighter, so when they fledge, they have an easier time of it. They tend to be more successful. And that maneuver that you see in the upper right-hand corner there, they do that when they're playing tag with each other, but that's also the maneuver that they do during the mid-air food transfers to grab the food from the parent. And this is just a picture of Blue a couple of weeks later coming into land on top of the Mazankowski. And this is the red band. She's the female, and she was the last to fledge. It took her a couple of days longer before she took off. And the females are larger, heavier, and sometimes they have a more challenging time of fledging in an urban setting. And we were particularly concerned for her because the previous summer, the female was the last to fledge as well. And she flew out, circled around, and then flew straight into the Mazankowski and didn't survive that hit. So we were worried for Red this past summer, but she did beautifully. She flew straight out and flew strongly. So these are pictures of her a couple of weeks after she fledged. And I know that you're not supposed to have favorites, but whenever I looked at her through the scope, she just took my breath away. She's just a beautiful, beautiful bird. So fortunately for us who are watching, peregrine falcons like to be on the edges of ledges. So they're, for the most part, they are in view and we can see where they are. This is at College Plaza. Those are the window ledges there. And each row of windows has a double ledge beneath it. So when they first fledge, they can land easily on that top ledge. And as they gain more skill, they can make it into that lower ledge there. And this is a ledge on the Clinical Sciences building. I thought it was just cute because all three of them are together there. And you can see that Red is on the left. She's the female, and you can just see how much bigger she is than her brothers, Blue and Yellow. So now I'm just going to share some stories, some rescues. All 3 fledglings had to be rescued last summer. And I just want to give a caveat that although I'm going to be sharing stories that I'm involved in, I just wanted to say that every single volunteer who put in time during the schedule is a part of these rescue stories. So this is a video that Trish Hartman made, and it just gives a really great example of why we're there. So I'm going to let the video play, and then I will talk more about it afterwards.
Mike. And there's Blue. Because, you know, that's the best place to park your butt.
So anytime the fledglings get this low, especially when they're newly fledged, it's very likely that we're going to have to rescue them. They're going to end up coming to ground. So what might bring them this low? There might be a strong gust of wind that bumped them against a building. They might have hit a window. Sometimes when they're playing tag with each other, one of them will get tagged too hard, or there might have been a really heavy rain and their feathers are wet. If they were in a rural setting, they would be able to fly in circles and spiral their way back up. But in these urban settings, there's just no room for them to do that. So Trish and Mike were on the last shift of the day, and they shared the information with the group about where Blue was. And so the next morning, Lisa, Peter, and I showed up, and Blue was basically in that same spot. So the story of his rescue, Peter stayed on the ground level. Lisa and I went up to the top of the parkade. So you can see her, that L at the bottom of the picture here, and that's Lisa. And she and I saw Blue fly just over those pedways and circle around and hit the Mazankowski and come to ground. And as soon as he hit the ground, some magpies were pestering him, which is another danger for these fledglings. So Lisa stayed up to guide us as to where he was and to watch where he might end up going. I ran down the stairs and Peter was already down there. So the P and the upper part there is for Peter, and the J is me, and the B is Blue Band. So the way to rescue a fledgling on the ground is to walk up to it very slowly, and then at the last second, just throw a sheet over it. So that's what Peter is doing here. I went across that little road there, which is the entrance to the emergency parking, in anticipating that if Blue did fly away, he would be flying in that direction. And so that is exactly what happened. Peter approached him, Blue took off. And the funny thing is, when they're newly fledged, they don't have a lot of maneuverability and they don't really have very good brakes. So Blue flew right into my arms. I only had my fleece on me, so I took my fleece off, and when he flew into my arms, I caught him in my fleece. And then Peter put him into a carrier. Sometimes we have cardboard ones. So this is Blue Band on the right there. Just remember that picture because I'll show it to you again in a bit. But we're very, very fortunate that Patty Boyce is available. She's on call during the FledgeWatch, and she comes on site to examine the fledglings to see if they've injured themselves in any way. And if Patty isn't available to do that, then they're taken to Wildlife Rescue and Rehabilitation. So she's just checking to make sure all the ligaments are still attached, nothing's broken. And I just want to play this short video here. This is what it sounds like the whole time that she's examining them. Yeah, so that is the sound of the FledgeWatch, and it's music to our ears. So if Patty gives the fledgling a clean bill of health, then they're taken back up onto the roof of the College Plaza. Oopsie, Clinical Sciences building. So there are security guards who take us up on an elevator into a restricted area. And sorry, my battery's low, so I'm going to just plug in my laptop. Yes, security guards take us up an elevator into a restricted area, and then they're put back on the roof. So on the left is Peter Fulbrandt holding Blue. Peter's wearing his COVID mask from last summer. And on the right is a very, very short video of Peter putting Blue back on the roof. So I don't know if you heard that "aw" there, but that was the security guard. So she had a bit of a treat there too. So you can see there's Blue on the roof, and there's the nesting box in the background there. So we have to be somewhat quick about it. Once the parents realize that the fledgling is there, they will get quite protective. So we close the door pretty quickly. And just a very funny side story. That's the second time that I've caught a fledgling by having it fly into my arms. And so I anticipate a possible escape route and then cut them off when they fly. So Bev and Peter had this shirt made up for me. So that's the picture of Blue that was in the carrier there inside the baseball mitt. So all my years of playing baseball have obviously given me some transferable skills. And that's a picture of Blue flying. Now I'll tell you the short story of Yellow Band being rescued. So he had been flying really well. A patient from the hospital had called security saying that there was a hawk on the ground outside the entrance to the hospital. So security phoned Bev and Peter. They were on their way in their car, but Bev phoned me on the parkade, and I ran down. So he was in a corner of the building on the ground. So as I was approaching him, I went to throw the sheet on him, and he tried to fly up against the building. So I dropped the sheet and I just grabbed him with my hands and then sat on the ground and waited for Bev and Peter to come. So I just have a small souvenir of a small puncture wound on my finger. But I have to say, I mean, I know that there are people who handle falcons all the time, and it's sort of not a big deal, but for an average citizen like me, getting a chance to hold those fledglings, even if it's just a brief encounter, it's a huge thrill, and I'm always on a high for the rest of the day. So the pictures, that's Patty examining Yellow Band, and then the two on the right are Yellow Band back up on the roof. So this time I took my bigger camera with me to get better pictures. So Yellow Band flew fine after that. Then he went through a stage where he seemed to be having problems with one wing. Maybe he got tagged by his brother. And then he was flying really strongly again. But sadly, a month after he fledged, Yellow Band was found dead at the base of the CSIS building, which is on the north end of Quad on the university campus. So presumably he flew into those windows there. And this was the first time that we've experienced death that long after they had fledged. So it was quite sad for us. But as you see from the stats that I've just added at the bottom there, the reality is that 3 out of 5 of these fledglings will die in their first year of life. So to reverse that, only 40% of them will make it through their first year. So all the more reason why it's really important to give them the best start that we can by doing these FledgeWatches. The final rescue story that I'm going to tell, because it's an unusual one. A couple of summers ago, I got a call in the middle of the night from the hospital, and they said that one of the fledglings was in the emergency bay, and the ambulances couldn't get in. So I called Trish and Mike, and then I got there first, got the sheet over the Peregrine, the fledgling, and then Mike and Trish arrived to put it in a carrier. So I'm going to play another video by Trish. And the security guard, she was not impressed. She just wanted that fledgling out of there. But you can see they really did a good job. They cordoned the area off. They called us, and happy ending to that story. And it's not, of course, it's not just the humans that are doing the rescuing. The parents are being very vigilant. They're watching them very closely, and they can get them out of a lot of scrapes themselves. So these pictures are of a fledgling from the Misericordia Hospital nesting site over at West Edmonton Mall last summer. And it was that day where we had these really, really strong winds, and where he had positioned himself, it was made worse by sort of creating a wind tunnel. So he would lift off and then just sort of hang there. So the mother peregrine below in the red circle flew under the fledgling, and then she escorted him out of there. So that was a cool thing to watch, and I'm glad he got out safely. So if a fledgling is not needing rehabilitation, but maybe just needs to be removed from the nesting site, perhaps they've already been rescued 2 or 3 times and they've just sort of struck out, we call Gord Court, and he comes and picks the fledglings up. And Gord takes them out to the hack site. And I'd mentioned the hack site earlier, and so now I'm going to let you know what it is. It's a controlled release site, and this one is at the Pembina River. So you can see this beautiful cliff going up from the river, and that in the center there is the hack box. And it's got a grill on the front, and when they first are put in there, the grill is closed, and they're fed, and they get to sort of look out the grill and see other fledglings flying around. And then once it's deemed that they're ready, the grill is lowered, and they can fledge from there. This is Steve Schwartz. He's the hack site manager out there. So he spends a couple of months working really hard, making sure that all these fledglings are fed and that they're safe. So I just wanted to share some pictures from out of the hack site just to show you how beautiful it is out there and how much nicer it is, I think, for the fledglings to be out of that urban environment and out amongst the trees. So it can be hard on the parents if they lose all their fledglings and they have no fledglings to raise. But I think it's really good for the fledglings themselves. So once they're flying, they continue to be fed for a while. The food is put on top of the hack box. So you can see on the bottom right-hand corner, that's factory quail. And just a short aside, the quail can be quite expensive to buy. And there can be up to 29 or 30 fledglings out at the hack site. So it can be quite expensive. So there's a wine specialty store called Bin 104. And they're right across from the Weber Center. And every fall, they do a silent auction to help raise money to pay for the quail. And this particular fledgling is interesting because you can see on its band there, the other fledglings that we saw had a black band. This one has a red band numbered band. And that means it's a captive bred fledgling. So there's a mix of the ones that have been rescued from nesting sites and the ones that have been captive bred and reintroduced to the wild. This is a fun picture that Gord shared with me. He calls it the group of 7. But it's quite a busy place out there. As I say, one summer, I think there were around 30 fledglings flying around. And that's the end of my talk. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.